Very good afternoon. So now we are going to talk about. I mean, the previous class we talked about differential manometer, inverted manometers, and then we talked about buoyancy effect and what happens if the object has been floated on some fluid, like whether it is going to float or is going to be submerged or going to be sink, depending on the role of buoyancy force and the center of gravity. What was the role of centroids? So we have talked about all these things. So let us move forward, and we're going to talk about today mainly the effect of significance of Reynolds number, and then we're going to briefly talk about continuity equation, how it is related to conservation of mass and conservation of energy and angular momentum, and then based on that we're going to derive Bernoulli's equation probably in the next class. So let us start the class today. First, we're going to talk about the fluid characteristic of fluid behavior. When a fluid is flowing on some surface, it exhibits some sort of velocity profile. As you can see in the curve here, there are three curves been given, A, B, and C. So what is A, what is B, and what is C? We're going to talk about this. So this is a cross-sectional view of the velocity profile. This is the leading edge of the fluid, and this is the barrier or the wall. You can see this is the wall. So you're going to move from left to right. So moving from left to right, and it is given here the cross-sectional view of the velocity profile. Since there is resistance being offered at the wall, so obviously the velocity is maximum at the center, and as you move towards the wall from the center, the velocity gradually decreases, and the minimum velocity is offered at the wall. Okay. So what is A, what is B, and what is C? Actually, A is called plug flow. The straight line, you can see this is the A. This is called plug flow. This is a case which happens when there is no resistance from the wall. This is an ideal scenario. If there is no resistance being offered from the wall, then the fluid exhibits plug flow. The velocity profile of that particular fluid is called plug flow. Next, move to B. That is called turbulent flow. As you can see that the velocity is not constant throughout the cross section. The velocity is maximum at the center and then it decreases. But again, in turbulent flow, the velocity is not constant. The velocity profile with time it changes, because in plug flow there is always some eddy formation happens, and then due to eddy formations, vortex formation, the behavior of the fluid is not constant along the cross section, and the fluid exhibits mixed type of flow. It is called a turbulent flow. The next one is the C, that is called laminar flow. We're going to talk about what is laminar and what is turbulent behavior. And there actually you can see the maximum velocity at the center, and then gradually the velocity decreases. But this is a very stabilized condition where you can see this the edges remain pretty much constant with time, and as the fluid moves ahead, the fluid, the velocity along with the leading edge, the wall velocity also increases in the same rate. This is called laminar flow. So we are going to discuss all this thing in detail. So let us move fast to the next slide. And before moving to laminar flow and turbulent flow, we have to first know what are the different fluid characteristics like streamline and strict line and all these things. So streamline flow, I think all of you are aware of it, like when a fluid flow at a very fluid flow at a very steady rate or steady states. Okay, the fluid exhibits streamline flow. Streamline flow means there is hardly any disturbances along the fluid path. Okay, if you have to, this is the case. You can see this is the picture which I'm showing. This is actually a streamline flow. As you can see, the fluid moving along its length in a very unperturbed manner. Okay, so there is no cross-sectional mix, or there is no vortex or eddy formation. There is no cross currents. So the fluid is pretty constant throughout its path. And the most important criteria for a streamline flow is that at an instant of time, as you can see, I have given here, this is the streamline flow. At any instant of time, the fluid velocity at it the fluid velocity is constant at its tangent. Okay, this is the velocity profile. This is my velocity profile. U, V, and W are the velocity profile along the X, Y, and Z direction, and the tangent to it, the tangent to it is the velocity which is constant. So at any particular time, if you draw a tangent, that will be the velocity which is constant. That is called streamline flow. As you can see, I have given here, this is the streamline flow, and then at any particular time, the tangent to it is called velocity, which is constant. If you draw here, the velocity will be constant. If you take a tangent at this point also, it will be constant. The equation for a steady state streamline flow can be given by U is the velocity along the x direction, that is by dx dt, V equal to dy dt, and W equal to dz dt. I have not written here, but eliminating dt, you can say that dx by u, dy by v, and dz by w are constant. So that is called streamline flow. So this is a streamline behavior. And then if you consider a three-dimensional view of the streamline, then you constitute a stream tube. If I take a locus of each point, okay, at the start, at the onset of the streamline flow, and at the end of the streamline flow, and take a locus of each point, so that then it will constitute a family of streamline, okay, and this will form a cyclic passage. A cyclic passage will form where no mass or no liquid can flow. As you can see, I have given an arrow here. No liquid can flow along the cross section of this tube, and that area which has been constituted by joining its streamline is called stream tube. Okay, so stream tube is bounded by an infinite number of streamline forming finite surface across which there is no mass flow. That is the definition of stream tube. A family of streamline forming a cylindrical passage of infinitesimal cross section. A stream tube is bounded by an infinite number of streamline forming finite surface across which there is no flow. Okay, that is called stream tube. Let's move to the next one. It's a path line, and we're going to talk about streak line. So this is actually path line. The top figure here you can see. The path line is nothing but a line made by a single particle. If you have a single particle, as it moves from position T0, T1, T2, T3, T4, you will have a green particle, red particle, yellow particle. As it moves during a period of time, then it is called the path line. The path line actually refers to the path of a single particle. Okay. A streamline refers to an instantaneous picture of the velocity direction of number of particles, whereas path line are the trajectory that individual particles flow. That is the basic difference between streamline and path lines. And what is streak lines? Streak line is the line made by a dye injected into a fluid. So if this is my path line, if I inject a dye, so the dye is going to move, okay, along its trajectory. So the trajectory made by the dye is called the streak line. It's the line made by a dye injected into fluid at any point, and thus makes the position of all the particles of fluid which are passed through that point. So if I increase the dye, so that if this particle might pass through this particle might pass through this, the green particle might pass through this, and the blue particle might pass through this. So if I join this line, so this is going to be my streak line. You understand? Because at an instant of time, blue particle might not be coincident with the green, red, or blue, yellow. Blue particle may be ahead than green particle, maybe ahead than red particle, maybe ahead than yellow particle. So if I inject a dye, the trajectory of the dye is going to make through this path. So this is going to be my streak line. But individual particle moving along this line are called path line. So that is the basic difference between path line and streak lines. Now, let us talk about fluid types of various fluid motions. Generally, velocity profile is given in the three dimension x, y, and z axis. Is a function of u, v, and w of space and time. Okay. So if in the space, if you say that the velocity is u, v, in the distance are x, y, z, and the time is t, then the velocity is actually a function of space and time, or distance and time. Where dv, the differential past derivative of dv is called del x by del x into dx, del v by del x dx, del v by del y dy, del v by del z dz, and del v by del t by dt. If we divide by dt, dv by dt is become like this formula, where u actually del v by del x is nothing but, u actually, what is u? U actually dx by dt. Okay. Similarly, v dy dt, that is the velocity in x direction, y direction, z direction. The dv by dt is known as the total or substantial. It's called substantial derivative. The term in the parenthesis u del v del x, v del v del y, w del v del z, it actually gives the convective acceleration. So that is called convective acceleration, dependent upon the particle motion in space. And the local acceleration is given by the second term, that is del v by del t. Gives the influence of time on the particle behavior. So this is actually the term within the parenthesis gives about the convective acceleration depending on the particle motion in space, whereas del v by del t gives the indication of local acceleration due to influence of time. If a steady state flow is being developed in which velocity, density, temperature at any point do not change with time, steady state flow, like no parameter is going to change with time. So this term will become zero. Del v by del t becomes zero. For that case, the local acceleration becomes zero. Del v by del t 0. And the flow which is time dependent is called unsteady flow. There actually del v by del t will come into picture. Okay. In steady state flow, streamline remain fixed and coincide with the path line. The streamline and path line are same depending upon the trajectory of the fluid element. Because in streamline, in the path, in steady state flow, the acceleration due to local acceleration is zero. So streamline and path line becomes identical. Let's talk about the laminar and turbulent flow. At relatively low velocity, very low velocity, fluid particle moves smoothly, parallel everywhere. Okay, because the fluid moves in a laminar fashion. Laminar motion means it's a very steady state flow. There is no disturbances in the fluid behavior. The fluid passes at identical point at certain amount of time, and this kind of flow is talked about laminar. If you dye inject into a laminar flow, it moves into the straight line. Okay, but at relatively high velocity, the individual particle of the fluid, instead of flowing in the orderly manner parallel to the axis of the tube, move in a erratic manner so that there is complete mixing. Then it is called turbulent flow. So what happens? Turbulent flow develops when there is a mixing of the liquid, there is a eddy current formation, there is a vortex formation, the velocity is not constant. So these are the criteria for turbulent flow. What is the equation for Reynolds number? There is a Reynolds number. The expression is dv rho by mu. As you can see, Reynolds number is equal to dv rho by. You are talking about Reynolds number when liquid or fluid passing through a tube. Okay, a cylindrical tube. Where d is the pipe diameter, because we're talking about cylindrical pipe or tube. So d is the pipe diameter, u is the average liquid velocity, rho is the density, and mu is the viscosity. If Reynolds number is less than 2100, the flow is called laminar. If it is more than 4000, it's called turbulent. And in between 2100, 4000, it's called transition region. What do you mean by transition region? There is a mixing happens because there is not only, this is neither complete laminar nor complete turbulent. So both the fluid coexist within this range. Reynolds number is a dimensionless number. So if you just put the value or unit of each parameter, you will see that there is a dimensional unity. Okay, Reynolds number is a dimensionless number. Okay, turbulent can result either from contact of the flowing stream with solid boundary. How the turbulent flow develops? It can be developed either if the fluid is interacting with the boundaries or the wall. Okay, that is called wall turbulence, or it may form between two layers of fluid moving at different velocity. So that is called free turbulence. So there are two criteria for development of turbulent flow. Either it can come from the resistance coming from the wall, or there is a mixing effect at the solid boundary, at the wall boundary, that is wall turbulence. And if the two layers of fluids intermix with each other and then turbulence flow develops, that is called free turbulence. Let us look into this. Turbulent flow consists of a lot of eddies, mass of eddies of various size coexisting in the flowing stream. Large eddies are continuously formed. They break down into small eddies, which in turn evolve still smaller one. The dimension of the smallest eddy can be as small as 10 to 100 micron. Smaller eddies that are rapidly destroyed by viscous shear. Okay, So this is actually a velocity profile of a turbulent flow. As you can see, this is the velocity profile, and which is varying between plus minus 5%, and this is time. As you can see, velocity is not constant. If I draw the velocity profile along the x-axis, there will be constant change in the velocity. Okay, that's why it's called turbulent flow. Let us look into in a better way how the laminar flow and turbulent flow develop. So we have shown an experiment here. As you can see, a fluid is flowing through it. Okay, the volumetric flow rate is given by volume of the liquid flowing across the area. This is a smooth oil-round entrance. There is no disturbances or resistance at the wall. This is the pipe. The fluid flowing through it, and if I inject a dye, so dye, what is going to happen? The dye is going to make a stick as the fluid flow. Okay, so as you can see here, three condition is been given. The dye, which is actually going to show the path line of the fluid. Okay, the path line is identical with the, because you see in the first case, the laminar flow, there is no disturbances in the velocity profile or in the distance traversed between the by the fluid from the start to the end, right? There is no disturbances, or there is no turbulence, or there is no noise across the y-axis. So that is called, that's why it is known as laminar flow. Whereas in the bottom case, as you can see, the fluid is, there is a lot of undulations. The fluid velocity is not constant across the pipe. This is called turbulent flow. And in between to this, there are transitional region, because up to this point, fluid is laminar, but after that, there is a mixing of the fluid. That is called the transition region. Okay. So this is actually explain what I just mentioned. The top situation is laminar, and the lower is turbulent flow. In laminar, the motion of the fluid particle is very orderly, with all the particles moving in straight line parallel to the pipe wall. There is essentially no mixing of neighboring fluid particle. In the sharp contrast, mixing is very significant and random in turbulent flow, in which fluid particle move haphazardly in all directions. It is therefore impossible to trace motion of individual particle in turbulent flow. Okay. So that's the difference between turbulent and laminar. The same explanation I just mentioned has been, just to refresh your memory, Reynolds number rho v d by mu. V is the average section mean velocity for the tube. Mu is the viscosity, rho density, d diameter. Here it is given 2000, but actually 2000 to 2100 is correct. So it is given 2000 in the book, but I think 2100 is correct number. Okay. And the transition region 2100 to 4000, and more than 4000 is turbulent region. Just remember one thing: this criteria, or the condition, is only valid if it is the fluid is flowing through a tube or pipe, not for other geometry. Okay, so geometry to geometry, Reynolds number differs. So this is only applicable when the fluid is flowing through a tube or pipe. Now let's look into the other aspects. We're going to talk about continuity equation and what are the physical parameters or physical equation which you need to know before you'll be able to know fluid motion or fluid characteristic, or development of, or determining the mass conservation, how to derive Bernoulli's equation. For before you have to move into that, we have to know fluid flow analysis. Generally, a fluid behavior actually in space given in 3 points, right? X, Y, and Z point in the space or in the field. Working with a finite region, because always we define a finite area, and then on within that area we try to determine or balance mass or heat or energy. Okay. By doing so, we determine the parameters which are varying, and that's how we derive the expressions. That's why working with a finite region. And second is the control volume method, which is the subject of this chapter. The first is the differential approach. This is actually differential approach. The detailed property on every point you have to determine, but the second one, which is actually control volume, has much more importance for the present syllabus, where we work on a finite region, and then we balance the forces, okay, or balance each different parameters. So let's look into this. In static problem, basically require only the density of the fluid and knowledge of the position of the free surface. Why density is the required parameter? Because we generally consider the fluid exhibits incompressible behavior, or there is no change in density with pressure and temperature. But most flow problem requires an analysis of arbitrary state of variable that must be defined by geometry, and then assign some boundary condition. So what are the basic approach we generally consider? to solve any arbitrary flow problem. Either it can be control volume, which we are going to derive, we are going to show, and then differential or small scale analysis, and then experimental or dimensional analysis. Control volume analysis is accurate for any flow distribution, but it is often based on average or one-dimensional property value at the boundary. Because when you are talking about control volume, we generally consider it into one dimension. If you have to consider into 2 or 3 dimensions, the expression becomes little critical and complex in nature. The differential equation approach can be applied to any problem. The problem is that in state 5 flow, it exactly requires or yield the analytical solution. Differential equation can be modeled numerically using CFD, which is you can use a lot of Fluent. There is a Fluent software which you can be utilized to solve a lot of practical problem related to fluid dynamics. And then dimensional analysis applies to any problem, whether it's numerical and experimental, analytical. You can numerically solve this or analytically express the different sort of parameters which vary with time or which vary with space. Okay, it actually is particularly useful to reduce cost of experimentation. So let us look into the first, in order to know basic physical law, what are the systems and control volume? Because when you derive the Eigenpoisson's equation or in Barnard's equation, you have to consider a system. So as you can see, if your system is a confined geometry, okay, it's a quantity of matter within which we are going to derive, which we are going to solve, or we are going to calculate various parameters. And the system and surrounding is demarcated by a boundary, okay. So the boundary is nothing but a real or imaginary barrier or surface that is separating the system from the surrounding, okay. The boundary is the contact surface shared both by the system and the surrounding. Mathematically speaking, the boundary has zero thickness, and we actually, that's why we apply boundary condition when you need to integrate any, partial differential equation or a differential equation. You need to set some boundary condition and then solve it within that limit, right? That's how boundary concept came. So let's look into the system and control volume. Systems can be closed system and open system. When you talk about a closed system, which is having a control mass, there is no outflow or inflow of mass, but there can be dissipation or energy or heat. The energy or heat can be, can be shared between with the surrounding, but there is no mass transfer. So as you see in the, and this is called fixed boundary, and this is moving boundary. This is top is the moving boundary because the boundary can be up, can be pull it down and pull it up because if it is a piston. But this is the side that's actually closed boundary. So as you see here, the mass remain constant, 2 kg, 2 kg. The boundary comes down, but the volume changes. So actually volume, energy, heat, these are actually some parameter which can be varied or it can cross the boundary, but mass cannot be, in a closed system, mass cannot be cross the boundary. So mass consists a fixed amount of mass, and no mass can be transferred across the boundary. But energy in the form of heat or work can cross the boundary. Even volume can also be crossed the boundary. So let's look into an open system or closed volume or a control volume. It is often called as a property selected region of space. The control volume usually encloses a device that involves mass flow such as compressor, turbine, nozzle. Flow through this device is best studied by selecting the region within which the device has the control volume. We'll come to the next slide. Both mass and energy can cross the boundary. Right? In the case of open system, mass can be cross the boundary. So mass transfer can happen. Energy transfer as well as can happen, because energy transfer, already I have shown you that it can happen in the closed system also. Definitely in open system, both mass and energy transfer can happen. A large number of engineering problems involve mass transfer or mass flow in and out of the system. A model using control volume. A water heater, radiator, turbine, compressor, all kinds of mechanical device involve mass flow and heat flow, energy transfer. Should be analyzed based on control volume. In general, any arbitrary region in space can be selected as a control volume. There is no concrete rule for selection of control volume, but the proper choice certainly makes the analysis much easier. So let us look into this example. As you can see here, a control volume. This is the, this is the control volume. This is real boundary, and this is the piston moving, like to and fro. So this is an imaginary boundary because the opening and the closing, opening end and the closing end, it can, the mass and energy can, easily move in and out. That's why it's called imaginary or imaginary boundary, whereas the real boundary are actually this side. Okay, the boundary of a control volume are called control surface. These are called control surface, and they can be real or imaginary. This is an example of a nozzle. The inner surface of the nozzle forms the real part of the boundary. This is the real part. And the entrance and exit at the imaginary part, there is no physical surface there. Similarly, this is a moving boundary of a piston, but these are actually fixed boundary. This is also moving boundary. So, what are the laws of mechanics which states where there is an interaction between the system and the surrounding? First, the system is has a fixed quantity of mass denoted by m. The mass of the system is constant and does not change. So, the mass of the system is constant. If you take the first derivative with time, that will be 0. So, the law of mechanics has a very simple mathematical form that is called conservation of mass. So, there is no mass transfer happening. Okay. Second is the surrounding exert a net force on the system. So, what is Newton's second law states? The mass is in the system will begins to accelerate. So, since mass is constant in the first case we have considered, but you apply a net force from the surrounding. So, as per Newton's law, what is going to happen? Since mass constant, but we are applying a force from outside, there will be some sort of acceleration. Okay. So, force will be mass into acceleration equal to mass dv by dt or d by dt mv. So, that is the second case. There is a acceleration. So, Newton's second law is called linear momentum relation because there is a acceleration and momentum which is going to happen. Now, this is a vector law that implies the 3 killer unit. The momentum can be in the 3 direction, fx, max. Acceleration in the x, y, and z direction can be given by fx, fy, and mz. Third is the if surrounding exert a net moment m. Third consideration you are going to, if it exerts a net moment m, momentum, you are going to consider a moment about the center of the mass of the system. There will be a rotational effect, where rotation is given by dh by dt. The momentum is given by dh by dt, where h is the angular momentum of the system about the center of the mass. So this is called angular momentum relation. So the first is the conservation of mass, second is the linear momentum relation, and the third is the angular momentum relation. What is fourth? Fourth is the heat. Heat either is being heat generated or heat dissipated to the system, and it is being done by some work has been done. Del W is done on the system. Then system energy D must change accordingly to the energy relation or first law of thermodynamics. Del Q minus del W is given by the energy which is being done. That can be positive or negative depending on whether heat is positive or negative. And it can be given by in the scalar quantity Q dot minus W dot d by dt. So finally, the second law of thermodynamics lets entropy change, which is given by ds to heat added and absolute temperature. So entropy increase is given by del Q by T. So this is a valid for a system and can be written in control volume form. There is no almost practical application in fluid mechanics. So let's look into this. What are the basic physical laws? As I just mentioned, first is the conservation of mass. Second is the linear momentum relation we have just talked about due to the force which is being exerted on the system due to acceleration happens. The angular momentum and finally the energy equation. Okay, so these are the basic conservation of mass, linear momentum relation, angular momentum, energy equation. These are the basic consideration. We always, like we will take into consideration before solving any numerical problem. Like for the Bernoulli equation, we're going to consider all this. And if it is not applicable, then we'll strike it out. And then we're going to consider 1 or 2 parameters. So we have derived 3 basic control volume relations in this fluid mechanics. The first is the principle of conservation of mass, from which the continuity equation is developed. We're going to confine our study only in the conservation of mass. And from that only, we're going to derive Bernoulli's equation. The principle of conservation of energy, from which the energy equation is derived. It's not covered in the syllabus. And finally, the linear momentum, conservation of linear momentum, from which equation evaluating dynamic force exerted by the flowing fluid may be established. So let's look into the control volume. The control volume is a finite region by which we always consider some parameter which are coming in or going out. Okay. And it has some open boundary through which mass, momentum, energy are allowed to cross. So that can be mass transfer, energy transfer, momentum transfer. The analyst, what is our role? We are going to make a balance between the incoming and outgoing fluid properties and resulting changes within the control volume. Then we can calculate the gross change in properties like force, power, output, heat transfer, whatever the parameter you want to determine, we can derive it. With this method, however, we do not care about the detail inside the control volume. We only consider about the changes happening as you move from left to right. So let's look into this. We have an inlet. This is a control volume. It's a tank or reservoir. Let's say velocity of the fluid in the stream. It's V, area, section area of the stream. V is the pressure and rho is the density. So fluid coming in through this green arrow and then going out through the red arrow. So what happens? First, we have to consider the volumetric flow rate or discharge rate, okay, which is given by volume into area. So that is given by Q. That is the volumetric flow rate given by VA, because the total volumetric flow rate is constant as the inlet and outlet. And the mass flow rate, which is also given by rho VA, mass of flow crossing a section per unit time, is given by m dot rho VA PQ, rho Q. The momentum flux defined at the momentum of the flow crossing a section is given by m dot V. Okay. So these are the control parameters we are going to consider. And then if you have conservation of mass by steadiness, if the total mass of fluid contained in the control volume invariant with time, that means there is no change in the parameter of mass or the mass remains constant, there must be exact balance between the total rate of flow. Volumetric rate of flow must be equal. Mass outflow and mass outflow should be equal. Now what is mass flow rate? Mass flow rate is rho VA, as you see. So when translated in the following mathematical expression, rho 1, rho I, Vi, Ai at the inlet and rho I, Vi, Ai at outlet. So because we are considering conservation of mass. Okay. Because we have already considered that the control volume invariant with time. Where m is the number of inlet and n is the number of outlet. I want to, if it is 2 inlet, then it will be 2. If it is 3 outlet, then n will be 3. So like that we are going to solve. As you can see, the fluid flowing through here is the inlet and then 2 is the outlet. Though the control volume has different cross-sectional area, bending and other things, but since we are considering the conservation of mass or invariant condition of the volumetric flow rate, so this equation applies. So VIAI in, VIAI out, or actually VIAI is nothing but QI, QI. If we just consider two cases here, Q is equal to V1A1, V2A2 is constant. What is V1A1? Because as you can see, the diameter is different, so the inlet cross-section area is different. Similarly, as you can see, it is narrow compared to the inlet, the outlet. So the cross-section area A2 is also low. But since we are considering continuity equation, we are holding continuity equation or conservation of mass, the volumetric flow rate should be identical. Maybe velocity is small here, but velocity is high here, which actually balance the total volumetric flow rate. That is V1A1 equal to V2A2, which is equal to Q. An example is given here. Water flow to a garden hose. You have a nozzle, garden hose, a bucket. The garden hose attached to the nozzle used to fill a 10-gallon bucket. The inner diameter of the hose is 2 centimeter. This is 2 centimeter inner diameter and reduces to 0.8 centimeter. So it is 2 centimeter here at nozzle. It is reduces to 0.8 centimeter. At a nozzle, it takes 50 seconds to fill the bucket with water. Determine the volume and mass flow rate of water through the hose and the average velocity of the water at the nozzle exit. So we are going to consider it, right? So it takes how much time? 50 seconds to fill the bucket with water. Okay, it's a 10-gallon bucket. So let's solve it. The garden hose used to fill the water bucket. The volume and mass flow of water. Water is an incompressible fluid. First of all, so flow through the hose is steady. There is no waste of water. Density of water is considered 1000 kg per meter cube or 1 kg per liter. 10 gallon water discharged in 50 seconds. The volume and mass flow rate, volume by total time, right? That is the volumetric mass flow rate, because V by del T is actually 10 gallon is 3.7854 liter, and because 1 gallon is 3.7854. If you divide by the volumetric flow rate is 0.757 liter per second. Whatever the mass flow rate multiplied by density, the volumetric flow rate. And we consider the density 1 kg per liter. So liter get cancelled, it's become 0.757 kg per second. Now the cross section area of the nozzle exit is pi d square by 4 or pi r square. The exit is given 0.8 centimeter, radius is 0.4. It's become this much. The volumetric flow rate through the hose at the nozzle is constant. Then the average velocity of water nozzle will be, because the volumetric flow rate is same, 0.757 kg, right? Area is different, so velocity will be higher, divided by that area, and it will become 15.1 meter per second. That is the velocity of water at the exits or at the nozzles.